The Soldier's Lot. Few Chicagoans today are aware that the body of Senator Stephen Douglas, the little giant who campaigned against Abraham Lincoln, is interred on its own on Chicago's South Side under a towering monument outside a condominium complex. In fact, Douglas and his wife had made their home at this very spot on their estate called Oakenwald, near 25th Street and Cottage Grove Avenue. The tomb, however, did not come to fruition for more than 15 years. In the interim, one of the most notorious prison camps in history grew up around it. Camp Douglas was first founded as a training camp for Union soldiers in the early days of the Civil War, when Chicagoans were chomping at the bit to participate in the conflict. After the capture of Fort Donelson in February 1862, more than 12,000 captured Confederates had nowhere to be housed, and Camp Douglas became a prison camp. Death was a daily occurrence at the camp, most from diseases like smallpox and scurvy. There was no cemetery on the grounds, and the dead were hastily piled in makeshift burial grounds near the camp, or sold to a local undertaker who promised to give them proper burials at Chicago's City Cemetery in Lincoln Park. Greed on Undertaker C.H. Jordan's part, however, led to the burial of more than 3,000 of the camp's Confederate soldiers in the cemetery's Potter's Field. By the time the order came to close the cemetery and relocate the graves, a good half of them had disappeared in the shifting, sandy loam of the field. In addition, desirable Rose Hill Cemetery refused to inter the Confederate dead within its property. Oakwoods, instead, stepped up to receive the unwanted soldiers for burial on its South Side grounds. Earlier, Oakwoods had arranged for reburial of the smallpox victims who had been interred outside the walls of the camp. 2 aldermen were awarded the contract to rebury the soldiers from City Cemetery. Witnesses on hand at the burials claimed that a large number of caskets seemed to be empty. It is now generally believed that the majority of Confederate burials at City Cemetery remain there today, under the ball fields near LaSalle and Clark Streets. Both that expanse and the park built on the former site of Camp Douglas are today rife with ghostly encounters, including tactile sensations of being grabbed by one's arm or hand, the smell of tobacco, and intense spots of cold and feelings of dread or sadness that come and go without reason and without warning. The Soldier's Lot at Oakwoods went on to suffer myriad problems with drainage at the site, leading to reports of sunken graves, disappearing markers, and worst of all, claims that buggies and wagons were driving over a portion of the occupied land. In 1893, a monument was erected by former Confederate soldiers, families of the dead, and other supporters of the lost cause. The site continued to deteriorate from drainage problems, and just after the turn of the century, the monument was removed, a mound of dirt piled on top of the graves, including many of the markers, and the monument replaced. The Confederate Mound still stands today, a tribute to the bravery of the Confederate dead and their legacy of unrest in their final resting place of Chicago, so far from home. After the war, the drive to complete Douglas's tomb resumed. Despite a hearty wave of support at the laying of the cornerstone in 1866, the needed funds were not forthcoming for the planned structure. When the tomb portion was completed, the body of the little giant was put in place, but the site soon languished for want of money to complete the monument, the foundation cracking and the surrounding grass becoming overgrown. Stephen Douglas's widow begged authorities to move her husband's tomb to a more fitting location where it could be cared for, but her pleas went unanswered. Finally, after years of failed funding efforts, the tomb and memorial were completed, but the site would forever retain its reputation as unattended, uncared for, and unnoticed. Sightings of shadowy male figure in period dress sitting on the ground near the tomb began almost immediately after its completion, causing Chicagoans to wonder the lack of respect shown Douglas by the funding problems that had brought him back from the dead. But the truth was, there were at least 2 other possibilities for a ghostly visitor here. In November 1877, W.F. Coolbaugh, a well-known Chicago bank president and close personal friend of Douglas, shot himself at the monument. He was found prostrate in his own blood, with a pistol at his side. Coolbaugh's family told the press of their patriarch's long ill health and periods of despondency. He had been cheerful enough lately, they said, but when he did not return home the night before, the men of the family had gone out in search of him until the wee hours of the morning. 2 years later, 2 more men would kill themselves at the foot of the Douglas Monument. In March of 1879, a man named Matthew Walsh, suffering from a fit of depression, killed himself by shooting. 2 months later, a second man shot himself at the Douglas Monument. Martin Arndt was a tailor who had asked for a raise at work on the morning of June 29, 1879. The raise was denied and Arndt dismissed from his position for asking. Out of his mind with fear and filled with self-doubt, Arndt realized in a moment of insanity that his union provided suicide benefits to families of its members. He decided to kill himself, and after writing a letter of apology to his wife, made his way to the Douglas Monument and shot himself in the chest. He did not die from the first wound and shot himself again in the temple. Occasional tales of that shadowy figure still are told today of the monument marking the grave of the little giant, Stephen Douglas.